Welcome to another episode of the Unleashing the Future of Work, a Guide podcast with Tim Salau, CEO of Guide. And today I am joined by the honorable, the veteran, the amazing Parker Lee. But before I introduce him, I want to show you all love. No matter where you're tuning in, let me know how you're doing in the comments below. How is your Monday? How are you hanging in there? And more importantly, what are you doing to ensure that you're going to have a thriving and wonderful week? The Unleashing the Future of Work, a Guide podcast has been incredibly fun for me to do over the last few months now. And I went into 2020 really focused on making sure that I kept consistent with this podcast. One, because I love doing this, and two, because it's a great way for us to build the Guide community. And I am really appreciative for all of the love that I've been receiving around the podcast and the community that we're building around Guide, because one, it's what this is all about. We use media to elevate people and, more importantly, inspire and offer a platform for amazing leaders like the one that I'm about to talk with today to share what they're passionate about, what they do, and how they're changing the world. So let me go ahead and get into it. Today, I am joined by Parker Lee, a veteran of the consulting, technology, entertainment, and sports marketing industries. Most recently, Parker co-founded the design consultancy Territory and is co-author of The Art of Opportunity. Prior to Territory, he served as vice president of business development at Xplan, where during his 8-year tenure, he was responsible for leading sales and marketing efforts, which under his leadership enjoy significant annual growth. Parker has been actively designing organizations for better performance since the 1970s. The 1970s, y'all. During the dot-com era, Parker acted as vice president of business development for 4 pre-IPO tech companies. And prior to breaking into the technology field, Parker enjoyed a varied career in the entertainment and sports industry. Notably, in the 1980s, he acted as director of entertainment and special events for Caesars Palace, Las Vegas Hotel and Casino, and agent for cycling star Greg LeMond. You know, this guy is amazing. He's written one of my favorite books of all time, The Art of Opportunity. And more importantly, I think he's a creative and innovative mind that I really wanted to bring on the show to have him talk a little bit about what he's working on right now, his thoughts on the future of work, and how he believes organizations are going to have to adapt post-COVID-19. So without further ado, I want to bring on the amazing Parker to the show. Hey, Parker, how's it going, man?
Tim, it is always a pleasure to chat with you. I always learn something and find something entertaining and fun to carry away.
Thanks so much, Parker, for being on the show with us today, man. I want to ask you, how are you doing? How have you been hanging in there in this COVID-19 era?
You know, the associates I've got at Territory, we've been working remotely or distributed for about a decade. So this is nothing new to us in terms of the way of working. That's our easy part. In fact, we're getting called on to help others figure that out. More importantly is health and family and all that. Everybody's well. We're using our favorite Zoom to do happy hours and Mother's Day parties and all the rest of that. So things are good. The fun part is in work, where it is different for most companies because they're not used to this. They don't know what to do.
Yeah. And I love how you mentioned, first of all, I would love for you to kind of share, I know I introduced you, but, share a little bit about how long you've actually been in this space of helping organizations reform. And more importantly, just in the creative space. I mean, you've read some of what I believe are some of the most notable books on how do you kind of nurture creative thinking and innovation within your organization. And so I would love to have you kind of just share a little bit about, how you kind of led into doing this work.
It really was back in the 70s. It's kind of weird to even say that word, but it was a long time ago. And there were pioneers of organizational development, organizational design, organizational behavior. I was in college at UC Davis, and you had to declare a major, and I was stuck going, what the heck am I going to do? I'm passionate about observing how people interact, operate, and work in organizations. And I was in the marching band. I was editor of a paper. I was head of my dorm. And I'm watching this happen. And I'm finally say, I go to my advisor. I said, is there a major that is about that? And he points at his bookshelf and he says, I'm getting my doctorate in it. And I went, oh, my timing's good. He said, help yourself. So I dug into all these books from organizational behavioralists at the time, industrial psychology and that stuff.
Yeah.
There wasn't a major like that at Davis. So I wrote my own, which was a
Wow.
blast. And then I created the courses. Every course was what do I want to study? And then grab the books and meet with my advisor. So I started back then, my passion for it. I wrote a grant and got one of only 2 student-funded grants that was called for the Student Center for Educational Research and Innovation. And it was
Yeah.
about trying to get people to not do rote learning, but have the passion for understanding and learning, and giving grants to them so they would start programs like that.
Wow.
So it started way back then, and then I kind of did a left turn. I became a musician singing on the streets in San Francisco right out of college. That was a big left turn. And then we did 5 national tours, #1 club act in the city, got on MTV, and then my daughter was born, and I said, I want to be a part of her life, and you're not going to do that where you're on the road. So I quit, and about a week later, I got a call from a friend of mine who asked me to come to Caesar's Palace. And that was another insane ride, where I was director of entertainment and special events at that hotel back when, big name entertainment was what they did there versus the shows, which is how they operate now. But so I met my first day on the job, Frank Sinatra. I mean,
Wow.
really. Boing. And then so I booked talent and did special events in the parking lot at Grand Prix auto racing, Grand Prix tennis events, Evel Knievel, met Diana Ross, Rodney Dangerfield, Lionel Richie, Tom Jones, Wayne Newton, blah, blah, blah. Anyway,
Wow.
I got into sports marketing. So that's when I first started kind of dealing with operations of organizations and how to improve that. And I ran the events division for one of the pioneers of sports marketing, a company called ProServe. We had Michael Jordan, Jimmy Connors, and other artists, but we either ran, managed, or represented 120 events a year. And that's when I really crawled into how to improve operations. Just like Jerry Maguire, I wrote the memo, had the jerk father of an athlete, and got fired, and came back to the Bay right as tech was starting to explode. There was no .com yet. There was no internet yet. But I used to crawl under the desks of CEOs and say, and put a 5 1/4 inch or 3.5 inch floppy disk into their computers and say, this is multimedia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
And that's what took me down the road. And then from there, I've spent 30 years in doing consulting and operations and innovation and management, and how to make this happen in this brave new world of technology.
Yeah, that's powerful. So you've had, quite the legacy thus far, Parker. And I want to show love really quickly to our amazing viewers and listeners who are tuning in right now. Shout out to Kimberly Freeman. Hey, Kimberly, longtime fan, one of our top viewers. We appreciate you for always tuning in, Kim. Shout out to Henry. Hey, what's up, Henry? How's it going? Shout out to Rocket Bull. How are you, Mr. Islam? I hope that you're doing well. And shout out to Antoine, who is saying, how are you doing today? We are doing well, Antoine. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure that y'all share this with y'all's network so people can tune in and hear a little bit about what we're going to dive deep on today on Unleashing the Future of Work, a Guide podcast. So, Parker, you've had such a quite a legacy thus far. You've done a variety of different things. I want to talk to you a little bit about how have you seen organizations of yesterday differ from the organization of today that's really more built for modern age, right? To last and to sustain. What are some of the differences you noticed?
Well, they're mega. And I think the thing that is putting a huge spotlight on it, obviously, is the pandemic, where you and I participated in, we'll get into that a little bit, the start of the work forward movement.
Yep.
Yep. And that was the coming together to say, while we talk of and love to say the future of work, I got tired of hearing that and said, really, every company you talk to or consult all have their own point of view about, oh, the future of work is having an open environment, or the future of work is using asynchronous or synchronous whiteboarding, or the
Yeah.
future of work is teams. And the answer is, you're all pretty children. It's not even the future. We have it today. It's a matter of how you approach it and how you enable it. So what's different today than back when I was just a young pup is that technology has enabled us to do so many more things, so much more creatively,
Mm.
and our approach to how we work has become much more dynamic, I think, than the old school way. And that's what I wanted to put a spotlight on, that into what Work Forward is about.
Mm. And so let's dive deep on that. What is work forward about? I think a lot of people aren't aware of this movement that we are a part of.
We are, and thank you, Tim, for your help in doing that. We talked about this concept of uh, how do you get a perspective on making work better. So it we took at it a look at it and brought about 13 executives into New York City, hosted
Mm.
by you and your old haunts there, and me being a part of it. And we took what's the ecosystem of work, where we look at
Mm.
it, the who, the what, the when, the why, the where, all those elements in this holistic perspective, so you could figure out at the end of the day, how do you evolve and make work better for us right now.
Mm.
And the starting point was, so why do we all work? Because if we don't have that perspective, we don't know how do we measure that we're making it better. So we looked at that, and then we looked at how do we work, and in the set of activities, from planning to creating to interacting to what resources are being used. And then we started iterating on, so what would help us accelerate making all that better.
Mm.
And that's what we ended up with a set of principles that we looked at, of being transparent and being diverse and having communication and collaboration. How do you evolve, build equity, hold people accountable, and doing all this in a work forward environment. And we've created a site. There's workforward.co that describes this. And then we created some tools so that people like you and me can be saying, well, that sounds interesting, and I think work can be better in my environment.
Yeah.
So how do I have that conversation? So we
Yeah.
built these tools. You can use them in Mural, or you can use them on your own to have an interactive conversation with your associates about, well, what does it look like right now, and where do we start poking at it? Is it technology? Is it the how we work? Is it our systems? Is it our resources? Where do
Mm.
we start?
Mm. And I think I loved being a part of the event. I remember like it was yesterday, right? And it
Yeah,
was
that was
such a
pretty cool.
participatory and engaging event where you had so many thought leaders from a variety of different companies really coming to the table and saying, this is where we see where we're going, but also, this is the practices and the framework that we believe we can all kind of align on to build a much more work forward oriented future, right? Versus just always
Yeah.
talking about the future of work.
Yeah, that is it. And what, you and I and the folks there landed on is that, these key values: work is social.
Mm.
There's nobody out there that works alone. So it's,
Mm.
what are the contributions and collaboration? Work is really personal.
Yeah.
Um, the meaning of it, some people are just trying to survive. They're trying to get through, especially in these COVID days, and other ones are
Yeah.
doing it for altruistic. You got the frontline workers. So it's either about accountability or commitment, but we all do it for a different reason.
Yeah.
And it's truly human. Work is about the human experience. You got to have an empathy towards
Yeah.
how you have that effort and what you do in your product.
It's so
Um,
true. It's so true.
go in there. And then, what do we use and how do we get it better? That's
Mm.
that's really the hook. So that it could be, a lot of it is just technology, or you and I work, steel case. What do we put in an office? But I think
Yeah.
what I'm seeing is a a lot of leaders. I was on with the CEO of a hospitality company 2 days ago, and he said, I'm actually becoming more productive right now. And I went,
Really?
really? He said, well, I'm not on an airplane 80% of my time. And I'm finding that quality of life is better. We're getting more work done. But he said the place where it's fallen down a little, when you all look at a screen and you see 15 little cubes up there, the Brady Bunch,
Yeah.
you can't really do that shoulder to shoulder creative work on a whiteboard and otherwise. That's why we lean in on mural or
Yeah.
literally just the power of sketching, just making pictures and posting them up with each other.
Yeah.
Bang. And that's having an impact. So I think the punchline here is, I think that the way we work will lean in on technology. We'll have much less face-to-face in real time and much more digitally, and that's going to help the earth. That's going to help climate change, and it's actually going to help productivity.
Those are powerful, right? And I see that same curve happening from now and moving forward. I want to ask you, Parker, because you've been an exec, you are an exec, and you talk with execs, and you've seen this change over time. And I think right now we're starting to see a lot of organizations get creative, right? And thinking about how do they adapt, how do they innovate. One of my favorite examples I've been sharing is how Twitter, for example, they're completely saying that our workers can work remotely forever. It's their choice now how they want to work. So they're embracing a work from anywhere protocol, as I would like to call it. And then you see companies like Airbnb who are essentially, what they're doing is that they're adapting their marketplace and their platform to focus more on local housing and long-term stays and renting, and then even encouraging their hosts to host online experiences. By leveraging Zoom, right? They're really adapting to these times. And, you're someone that's really looked at innovation and creativity from multiple lenses within organizations and as a consultant outside of organizations. I want to ask you, where do you see the intersection between creativity and innovation?
Well, they are intrinsically tied. A lot of people think of innovation as just setting up a skunk works or making a new product, and it's much more than that. The intersection of creativity and innovation is the human-centered approach and the customer-centered approach. So that when you have that empathy and that understanding of the core values and needs of whoever you're talking about, you can then come up with creative solutions, and you'll find the innovative techniques or ideas. And it's funny, I was with the book we had licensed for training over in China, and we did a presentation with their search engine company, and it was all engineers, and they said, we're trying to do innovation, and every time we make a new feature, somebody steals it. And I go, you've got the wrong idea here. Innovation isn't about making a new feature. It's about what does that user or customer have as a core need and their values, and making it better, making it applicable to them. And it might mean you're going to break your entire model where it's a mix of service and product and extension, and how do we weave it then with the real world in the community they're in. And they looked at me and went, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. So answer your question, I think it's the mashup. I think we will have a greater value also on creativity and what that means. The left brain, right brain is it. When you're out of balance, it doesn't work. I'm a huge supporter in diversity of humans and diversity of thoughts, because the outputs tend to be much better because they're hardened by forcing us to have different perspectives. And that lands you on the creativity pad. That's what makes the big difference, I think. And then we always, like in the book, I keep coming back to that, we always say you need to have context.
Context is king.
It doesn't matter if you don't look at the context. Innovation for Shell or for Google is way different than the innovation you and I deal with as a
Mm.
little small company.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's true.
Yep. What are you and I going to do on a personal basis with our smaller firms
Mm.
versus when you have the resources of tens of thousands of people? Those are two very different things.
It's true. It's true. A lot of different, there. You have to innovate at a different level of capacity.
That is exactly right. And you're usually more nimble. Uh,
Mm.
you do smaller, the circles of those evolving circles of test, try, learn, are
Hmm.
much tighter and focused, smaller groups.
Yeah,
Huge companies can do it on a big, huge scale, but I, I'm a firm believer in the small and
yeah,
the iterate, rapid
yeah,
iteration. It'll
yeah.
get you there.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to Parker as well. And you touched a lot about this in your book around how you design an organization and also how you kind of think about the creative process. And I think
Mhm.
a lot of leaders don't realize, they don't even have a clarity on what does the supply chain, whether it be their software company or a manufacturing company, what does that kind of like tool chain, that supply chain looks like within your organization in terms of how are you amassing the full capacity and assets of all of the people that work with you as a leader and across your different functions. And, I want to get your ideas. What are some suggestions that you would make for senior managers or leaders in traditional organizations right now, where they can where they can start tapping into that creative intelligence of their people?
Well, I think I am personally biased, and it leans in on what we do on the power of visuals. Of
Mm,
uh, it it enables us to align faster, see things better, have greater clarity, reduce confusion, and reduce arguments.
it's so
And
true.
so, just taking it in terms of supply chain, instead of talking about it or trying to put it into rectangles, boxes, and words, you draw it out, and then you
Yeah.
can see the humans in the system and
Mm,
what they are doing with each other and for each other, front of house and back of house. In other words, what are you doing in your company and what's
yeah.
happening for the experience of your customer? And when you can actually see it, then you can see the places where it's good and it's
Mm,
just firing up, and the places where it's broken. And then
mm,
you use big data that comes in to get feedback on all those parts. And you say, well, this is what the data is telling us over here. Oh, look, if we just pull an additional resource, or if we shorten the time or accelerate it or drag it in, but you have to see it to get there. Otherwise, you're
yeah.
just talking about a whole bunch of boxes and words, like I said. Um, and it enables a lot of people in one place, and you can
Mm,
use this on a screen or otherwise to poke at it and look at it and explore it. So I think that's one of the ways that technology is helping us do that. And then when you feed into it all the AI and all the data that can make it so it's real time while you're modeling it and looking at it, starting to get onto another planet here.
it's true. It's
The
true.
planet of Zytar. Yeah, it can
That is
happen.
true. Anything can happen. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
What are your examples of your favorite organizations who do this really well, you think?
Wow. Candidly, I haven't seen any that do it holistically from
Mm,
from the entire organization. I see a lot of pockets, and I see a lot of leaders that have a
mm,
team where they're applying it. There are some that are our good friends at Mural that we partner with that are starting to use that, but then um, it's a great example where the technology is both your friend and a potential barrier, because you've got to
mm,
get them over a hump of being able to be comfortable in using it. And then there are different levels of that use. So, uh, companies that are doing it holistically, it's funny. I mean, I love Google, and they've got a great culture, but they aren't especially applying it fully. When I've talked to some of the people that are back of
mm.
house on the whole, all their server side and how they're
Yeah,
launching operations and things like that. It's old school,
yeah.
uh, for example, from what I've seen and heard. And then I see other companies that talk about trying to build a culture of customer centricity, yet they don't have it from the top. It is top down, and the leadership's not in full support of it. So you can't get this cultural shift if it isn't throughout the entire fabric of the organization, and
Mm,
that's where it usually breaks. To get people to change behavior, they have to have a systems perspective, and it has
mm,
to be at the very top where they realize this costs a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of resources, and we're backing it. We're putting
yeah,
our people in it, and we're bringing in others to take care of it. And most organizations don't do that. They're broken
yeah.
apart in silos, as you've seen. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think what's so
you know
powerful
that
about what you're
personally.
saying.
You know that personally, my friend.
I definitely know that, and I've seen it. I say to someone that has seen it, and even with with how we think about building Guide as an organization,
Mm,
and for me, even as an organizational designer and just a trained designer, it's something I think about every single day. Is how are we designing an organization that completely, and I think there every organization is designed around functions, right? You want to design your
yep.
organization the way you want to be able to serve the customer, right? So you have to
Yep.
be intentional end to end. So it's not that silos are bad; it's that a lack of cohesion is, right? And
That's
and
right.
and
That's
and,
right.
and I and I often kind of like when I even think about how are we going to design Guide now and then in 10 years, it's a matter of how are we constructing a design system that more importantly respects the individual, the talent, and then more
Mhm.
importantly realizes that how are we creating cohesion, right? How are we creating
Yes.
synchronicity, right? Like for you and I are talking design right
Synchronicity.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, synchronicity. That word is so hard to pronounce. Thanks for helping me with
Yeah.
that, right? But how are you creating it across the entire system, right? And the entire
Yeah.
circumference of the system. And I think that's the challenge for every exec, every leader is like, do you realize that your organization isn't synchronized? It's okay if there's silos, but it's how are you synchronizing the silos?
You're on the money there. And it's I think the power of seeing the organization as not this pyramid with pillars in it, but instead as it's like a body.
Yeah.
It is a body. So it's, you think of it as a network system or a body that has multiple functions, but it's all flowing together. So what's the blood
Mm,
of of the body of your organization? So it has to have a way to communicate freely and openly and transport everything, that and the transportation that happens is of ideas
mm,
and communication and understanding. So I'm a firm believer of small teams with tasks and projects, but the information of what they learn and what they do is completely open, opaque, and has, or transparent rather, the ability to be shared rapidly, and the learnings that happen are shared rapidly. That
yeah.
has to be free flowing everywhere. And if it's
Yeah.
not, they're broken. They're broken.
Yeah. So I want to ask you something, Parker. Let's dive deep here. And by the way, thank you all so much for tuning in to this amazing conversation I'm having with the legend Parker Lee. If you have any questions on how Parker got his start in design, who are some of his favorite design leaders, I'm going to get to that actually later. But if you have any questions for Parker, please make sure you put it in the comments. So Parker, let's get to that, right? There's some leaders, they say we want creative intelligence. We want to create a culture where everyone's ideas are free flowing and whatnot. But then, what you realize at the same time, though, is that as a business, you have to prioritize, right? You have to prioritize based on a roadmap, based on the timeline,
Yep.
and based really on, quarterly margins. How do leaders, senior leaders and execs, how do they find that, that harmonious balance between embracing creative intelligence, but at the same time prioritizing what the business and the customer needs now? It's a tricky balance.
It is such a tricky balance. And I think that's the learning how to let go, where you're empowering those to make decisions and full trust.
Mm.
I read this book, Team of Teams. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. That was, I think, General Stanley McChrystal back when, whatever the craziness in the Afghan war, and realizing we were getting crushed because, and for good reason, because we had this hierarchical silo where there must be command and control up and down, and that the enemy was using mobile, was using small teams and rapid communication and sharing every little bit like that. So they could move and do things on a local basis or on a
Wow.
broad scale. And so suddenly he said, we have to change what we're doing. We're going to
Wow.
operate in small teams. We're going to empower them. And he had rank and file, whatever they're called, privates or whatever, where he'd get on the phone with them and they'd say, what am I supposed to do? And he'd say, what do you think we should do? They'd say,
Mm.
and then he would say, do that. You have the authority. Go ahead and make that decision. So he turned the whole organization on its head. And this goes back to what you and I were just talking about, a networked organization where you empower. Now it's
Mm.
how those leaders manage that creativity. You have to give them the trust and the power to make decisions, act like adults. And that empowerment makes them feel like, wow,
Mm.
I'm contributing,
Wow.
I'm respected, and I can feel comfortable in being creative.
Mm.
And otherwise, you're stifling that creativity because you're not trusted. You're not given the authority. You have to
Mm.
ask permission all the time. And that's not a way to create. You can't create when you need to have the freedom to be able to make some good thoughts, good decisions.
I love that you said this, Parker, because I think now that we're kind of entering this, I don't like to call it a remote first era because I think we're remote for a while, but I think
Yeah.
a lot of organizations are embracing it now. I think we're moving towards a flexible workspace,
Yes.
work environment future. But now that a lot of organizations are seeing the opportunity with embracing remote culture, and they're seeing how a lot of them are still thriving. I've actually been thinking lately that the way that work is going now, our workforce future, is inherently going to embrace that. But I think some organizations are already we've read the news, right? There's organizations that are stalking their employees at home, right? With in-home
Yeah.
camera software on their computer. A lot of leaders don't really understand how do you just give trust away in a remote culture. And I actually agree with you. I think trust is the most potent. It's the most potent thing that you can give away to really kind of nurture that culture of creative intelligence.
It is that. And that's part of so how did leaders understand that and embrace it and then apply it? And what you're talking about is applying it is not carrot and stick and saying,
Yeah.
I need to make sure you're online for 8 hours every day.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? Get your work done. You tell me what needs to be accomplished. What are we
Mm.
trying to do together? And I'm going to get it done, but let me do it in my own way. And everybody works differently. They are different. They have different, back to context, that word we were talking about. That's it. And it will be the organizations that embrace this way, I think, that are going to be the winners in the future.
Yeah.
They will be competitive. They will have people like you and me that want to work there and will come
Yeah.
into that organization and thrive. And more importantly, it'll be those people that amplify it to all their friends and their contacts. And it will drive the value of their stock, the value of
Mm.
their company, the value of their brand. And they
Mm.
will be the ones that will arrive and be our future. They're already there. There are some that are going that way.
I love that you said that, the amplification of it all. So I want to show love to Kimberly, and who has a really great question for you, Parker. She's
Mhm.
asking, how can the educational system be prepared to take on this to prepare our next generation of talent, which are students? I love this question,
Oh, I
Kimberly.
do
Shout out to
too.
you. This is a powerful question.
That is it. It is teaching the power of creative thinking and of collaboration, of difficult, complex problem solving,
Mm.
and that there is, as we know with design thinking and several and agile and the others, there are approaches you can take and putting it into teams. So you get
Mm.
socialization, you get diversity, you get respect, and that's the whole reason. Remember I told you about that student center that I started? That was because I said the educational system was broken.
Yeah.
Rote education will not give students the skills and knowledge and the creative IQ that is necessary now more than ever.
Yeah.
So now I have a daughter who is a sixth grade teacher, and she is brilliant, and she is applying those ways of learning with her classroom. And it's that's going to save our future.
Wow.
That is what's going to save our buns. Um, because if you're not giving them that skill, because we can't design, we're trying to educate for jobs, and the jobs are going to be morphing every 2 to 3 years. Every year they morph. So you can't design a person into a job. You need to design a person to be able to be adaptive, be creative, be inspired, to be motivated to work with people to find problems and solve them. And I think so. I wish I was an educator. I respect those people more than anybody else, and they have the hardest job on the planet.
Yeah.
Along their front line. But that's a long answer to that question. But it is about teaching them creative thinking, respect, creativity, left brain, right brain, collaboration, and we'll get there. And it's different at all levels because your brain evolves. And
Yeah, it is. It is. Or our
yeah.
brain is always evolving.
Thank you. I hope so.
With the information that we're taking in, and I think there's still a lot of research around the dynamicism of the brain. I think sometimes you read that, oh, we have it figured out, but we don't have it figured out. I think things are changing so fast, and I actually think in this era right now, we should actually be really looking into the science around how people are cognating now, especially with the release of VR, AR, and all of these different tools that are just changing the way we consume, I believe. And I think it's crazy now more than ever, the science around the brain, because I think what we're seeing now is that we actually have even more to learn because we're adapting our environments to fit our consumption needs. So I want to actually touch on a little bit about what my good brother, Mike Gates, who's a dynamic educator, public speaking coach, and one of the leading innovators in education. He says this is education's moonshot moment. Kimberly Freeman, now is the time to think differently. Let students learn, play in the real world, and engage students with experiences that map to success in the real world. Mike Gates is also saying, tear down the classroom walls and let schools operate more like a co-working space than the school. How do you feel about that, Parker?
Well, I love it. I think to me, blended is, whether it's education or otherwise, or humans. You can hear that in my voice a lot. So I think there is a time to come together as a cohort. It doesn't mean you need to even do it in school, but I think gatherings, Socratic or otherwise. So you come together, learn from each other, learn from a teacher who inspires you. And then, yes, I completely agree. You go out as cohorts, because it's in the world that you get those experience, that input, that observation, which is much of what learning is about, so that you then bring it back together and disassemble, reassemble, make some assumptions, go out and check those assumptions, come back, talk about it, see what somebody else learned, etc. So it's that in, out, participate, engage, learn, observe. It's those are the verbs of education. And the gentleman you just talked about is right on the money. But I think you need to have the capability. Now I want to circle back on your brains are changing. I think it was the guy that did the book that was with Tom Hanks, the movie something with
we're definitely not talking about Forrest Gump, are we?
No. This was the murder mystery where they had a cabal, and anyway, he wrote another book, I think it was called Origin, where he was speculating that the future of humans and our brain capacity is the blend of technology and who we are as humans. And it's already happening. Look at what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And you were talking about and VR, and we're going to have chips embedded in us in a little while. And after a while, there's a little bit of the bionic that's touching us. Yeah. Just what we're doing. Go back 10 years, we couldn't have been doing any of the stuff we're doing. So the capacity of computers, of sharing, of digital, of internet, of AI is going to start becoming normal. And now back to education. Now put that into education, and it's the freeing of the brain to be able to be creative with the leveraging of the power of technology. It's a little crazy where it's going. It's exciting, but I think we are now becoming that cyborg combination, is what I'm projecting into the future. That, and I don't see it as bad. I just see it's a natural evolution.
Yeah, it's a natural evolution. That's that's it's powerful, right? Because I don't
It's a
think
little crazy.
a lot. No, it's a little crazy because I don't think 80% of society is prepared to embrace that type of future. It's a bit too dynamic. In my opinion, for where we're at, because right now, I think even to your point, Parker, we're seeing a lot of the structural damage that already has been existing in the education system, but also
Yes.
just not even only in the education system, but just in terms of skills training too,
Oh my
right?
God.
And how we upskill people, how we reskill people, how we think about talent, right? At
Yeah.
a grand scale. And right now, I think there's a lot of conversations around the inequities of that current system. Do you have any
Massive.
suggestions for how people should think about addressing some of these issues?
Don't get me started, because I'm from a man of the 60s and 70s, and I believe quite a bit in the redistribution of wealth and opportunity,
Yeah,
and that until you can enable that equitable distribution of opportunity, then there's going to be there's going to be huge. There already are cultural issues. We're seeing the divisiveness that we're going through right now, and I think
hmm,
that's going to start. That's going to start breaking, which I completely endorse.
yeah,
It'll have to be there, and so it will have to be that. It will have to be legislated or otherwise, so that everybody has that opportunity to touch technology, to share the ability to job change or job define, et cetera. And it's not there right now.
yeah,
It's the institutional barriers are very serious. They're very
yeah.
serious.
They are. They are. So I want to show love to some of the comments that we're receiving. Shout out to Justin, who resides in Oakland. Mr. Harris, thank you for tuning in, man. So he's saying, just imagine in 2030, Parker. I remember walking around high school, talking to my phone, computers, etc., and people looking at me like, what the F? And now it's normal. Definitely a natural revolution for techies. Shout out to you, Justin. Great comment.
Yep.
So Joan is saying, classrooms should be everywhere and at all times rather than the conventional four-walled room. Joan, preach it. I love that. I love
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Take it
That,
beyond the four walls of the classroom. Kimberly is saying, I teach and educate my students about skills and how to adapt. I do not teach to a test. Kimberly is a fire starter. She is a movement
yeah, that's
igniter.
it.
Yeah, that's the
That's it.
mindset. That's the mindset. I love it. I love it, Kimberly. What are your thoughts on this, Parker?
Well, it is that, and that goes back to our educational reform we're talking about. Is if it's rote learning and memorization, you're not preparing somebody, because we have Google right now. Excuse me, I don't need memorization. What I need is somebody creative. When I say we're trying to solve this problem and this
Yeah.
group of people are having trouble accomplishing that, what would you do about it? And that's not
Yeah,
something
yeah,
that's on a test. That's something that,
yeah.
and it takes multiple people and minds. And as a couple of your folks are saying, and it's, you got to go outside. It's not in the
Mm,
classroom. It's outside observing it today. So it is, it's real world experiences. It's observation. It's experimentation. It's finding an assumption. And you
mm,
talk with a few people about it and say, what if we, or how come, what is, and then go
mm,
out and see it in action and play with it. And then you come back and you go, look what happened. When I went red to blue, this happened. But when I went red to green, this happened. Now let's go all green. And said, well, we never even used colors before. There, there is a future there that is the creative thinking and problem solving with us as a team, with us together. And you're promoting that. That's part of
yeah,
where you're trying to take it.
yeah.
And it is there. It is
It is
there.
there.
And it's going to be with the youth. The other gentleman said, imagine, I mean, I remember back what you called a luggable as a phone, literally with a suitcase. I would carry a suitcase around and pick up a phone. So now we've got it where the power of the computer in our phone is equal to what they were using when they put the first guys up in space, with a room full of tape drives. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. There you go. There's the blend of human and technology, and it's going to just keep accelerating. That is going to be our future. So it isn't about the tech.
Mm.
It's got to be about the creativity and problem solving.
The
like
people.
like the people. It is, at the end of the day, it's us. But
Yeah.
I have grave concerns for the inequities. There are 60% of the world's population that doesn't have the ability to even have the conversation we're having right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
imagine if we could empower that, what we could do. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I have friends that are trying to bring much greater mobile access and
Mm.
connectivity into Africa right now, and they're raising money for that capability. And there's a continent that's ready to explode with potential. It
Absolutely.
already it is the great lookout. As we looked at China decades ago, I think
Yeah.
you're going to see it there as soon as we can get the technology fully, the full opportunity and power of technology in that continent. We're going to look for a new day, a new day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. All great points. All great points. And I think, what I love about what you're saying is the fact that, I think the fabric of society is changing right now.
Mm.
I think COVID-19 was just that triggering effect that was looming. Although it's still a black swan, but all of the stats that people like McKinsey, Accenture have been talking
Mm.
about the next industrial revolution, they are unfolding, because of a black swan moment. But they were already looming. We were already predicting to happen, but it became more rapid. And we are seeing right underneath us right now. Some people may notice it and some may not, but there are new jobs being created that people don't even realize. There are new digital workplaces being refactored, right? And
Yeah.
organizations completely rethinking, okay, how do we ensure we can survive 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line? And that if something like this were to ever happen again, that we have the healthcare infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
We have the societal infrastructure. We have the workforce that will enable this and that will bridge that hybrid intelligence between human intelligence and artificial intelligence and digital intelligence. And one of the things that I've been really studying a lot, aside from the work that we are doing with Guide, is how does a workforce look like with robotic process automation, where now you have humans collaborating with bots to get the work done, right? I mean, you already
Yeah.
see platforms like Slack completely thinking about how do we become that premier destination for actually automating all of the workflows necessary within a enterprise. And they're not stopping there. I think they have a grand vision in mind. And I think all of these things are what we all should be thinking about, no matter what sector we're working in, healthcare or education, is how we kind of, one, closing the digital divide, Parker, right, and educating our next generation of talent, but also how are we taking the lead on embracing it too, right? Because I think, like, to your point, Parker, it's inevitable, right? Because one of the things I was recently watching on YouTube is that we're a generation, or us as humans, we're the only species that will adapt our environment to how we want it to be versus just adapting
Mm.
to the environment. And I thought that was so powerful.
It
That's what
is.
makes it special, right? So we're
It
doing all of
is.
these things to augment our intellect and augment our capacity.
Right. And I think that's the crazy, is we are the creature that can adapt our environment. Now we have that potential now. You're right.
Yeah.
And how we work, now you go back to, at the end of the day, work has to be a way of sustaining, of
Mm-hmm.
passion, etc. And as we try to readapt that, it is going to lean in on the things you were talking about, of AI blending with what we do to free us up to be more creative
Mm.
in finding solutions, delivering value, helping others, and AI is going to just accelerate it. It's going to make it even more powerful. It already is. What's fun is, you're right, the jobs are changing. You're going to watch that just keep happening and happening and happening. Uh, it's coming around a different corner. If COVID hadn't hit, it would have at some point, and it's going to hit again.
Mm.
And this gets back to, everybody has, I call it the hair on fire syndrome, where they were just, this is how I operate, and now I'm not doing it. I just have to figure out how to just keep the boats afloat and all that. And then they're starting to realize what you were talking about is, this is going to be kind of some new normals. How do we
Mm.
start doing, now gets back that creative thinking, scenario planning, so that we've thought through all the places it might go, and we have those scenarios kind of mapped out, visualized, understood. Now, what can we infuse it with signals and AI and modeling that will get us ready so that we will be an evolving species instead of a reactive species.
Mm.
And I think we're going there. We're running down that road. It's just a little slow, and some of us a little bit faster than others, but we are all running down that road. There's no doubt about it.
I love it. I love it. Evolving versus just reactive. That's the ideal organization. That's the ideal organization. So I want to actually shout out Antoine, who's saying exactly, you can be smart and gifted, but if you don't know anyone with the power to get your foot in the door, your education is worthless. How do you address people in that situation? That's a great question, Antoine. What are your thoughts, Parker?
Whew, boy,
That's actually a really powerful question.
It is. It is. And I think that goes back to when you have doors all closed to you, you need to figure out that you're not going to go through the door.
Yeah.
They're not going to open
the back door. You got to go through the
truly,
back door.
You're going to go through the back door. You're going to parachute in through the roof. You're going to find other ways and find ways of seeping into the system. And it's going to be creativity. I am a firm believer, though, in networking. And you'll have to find a way to leverage your own network and then your digital network to be able to find a path there. And if it doesn't work through that, then it gets back to now your creativity. So the creative ways are going to be finding the need that the organization has. And that shows that you've got to show research, intelligence, AI, and learning about your target, where you want to be, so that you can walk in with a solution they haven't thought of and a way of thinking about it where they go, I need that. I need that in my organization. And that goes right past the door,
Yeah, no, that's powerful. I love that. I love that. Shout out to you, Antoine. That's a powerful question. And, to also support Parker's answer on that is, I think we're now, one of the things that really excites me about what we're building with Guide is how are we not only addressing the skills gap, but if we're giving a platform for creators to be able to share their skills, share their knowledge, at the same time, we're also allowing them to build networks, right? And, one of the most powerful things you can do with technology is give people the opportunity to, one, monetize, get paid and, build their influence, build their communities. And I think that's truly one of the core fundamentals of technology today is that it is an equalizer in a sense, right? Where it gives people access to opportunity that, that is often siloed due to their location, right? And, I think to Parker's point and what we were talking about earlier, everyone that is doing their part in closing the digital divide and more importantly, bridging access gaps, I think, that can go a long way.
It'll make a difference because technology is the great equalizer. When everybody has access, has communication, and the ability to share, it makes any idea from anyone can be the best idea. And that's why it's critical to be able to take down those barriers, because that way every opportunity has a chance to have a light shined on it.
True. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. Has to be shared. Has to be shared.
It has to.
Let's make sure we can get that built. Yeah. With Guide, maybe.
Hopefully. So I want to cap things off by asking you, Parker, who are some of your favorite design leaders that have really impacted your work, or how you do this work?
The ones that I had early exposure to and played with, Dave Gray, who was the founder of Explain, absolutely brilliant. A guy named David Sibbett, who's one of the early practitioners in visual thinking and of graphical capture. An associate of mine who I've partnered with and done things, Sonny Brown, who is about the doodle revolution, visualizing that way. And then, the other great designers, some of the some of the guys I work with are absolutely brilliant facilitator designers for
Mm,
how to partner with people so that they can come through a shared experience of whether they're doing strategy or otherwise. My two partners, Matt Moraski, Matt Adams, have been doing this for years and years, and they demonstrate this new way of working, this approach of co-creation, of collaboration, of visualization. Um, and they're some of the grandest, I would say, right there. That's a group. And then my personal favorite human being from thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, rather, Leonardo da Vinci, who was
mm.
that human that was just fascinated by, well, if I'm going to paint, look at the difference that light makes. And then, well, if I'm looking at light, look what happens with the body. But if I'm looking at the body, I need to know what the muscles are doing. So I'm going to go in and dissect them and study it. It's like, would you stop using your brain to crawl into every single space there is?
Yeah.
An amazing human back then. So, yeah, those are a few. There's a few. I could go get a longer list, but that kickstarts us right there. And of course, my friend Tim Sellow, who's brilliant at what he does. Brilliant.
Trying to be, man. Trying to be as good as you. Trying to be as good as you. Thank you so much, Parker. With that said, thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of Unleashing the Future Work. Please, y'all, if you love this episode, share it with your amazing networks. Definitely tag Parker and I. And also make sure that you follow Parker on LinkedIn. With that said, Parker, where else can the people connect with your work?
I mentioned earlier, go look at workforward.co, which is the movement, open source movement on how we can make work better for all of us. The company I have, Territory, that's territory.co. Go there and then do connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to chat, reach out, touch. You can look at the book, The Art of Opportunity, that I wrote.
Great
That's
book.
enough places. Thank you very much.
Great
Tim,
book.
this was a blast, an absolute blast. And carry on the good work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Parker. We appreciate you for coming on the Unleashing the Future of Work, a live online podcast. And thank you so much for blessing us with all of these great tips and solutions for how we should think about the future. With that said, you all, thank you all so much for tuning in. I am going to kick Parker out now and ensure that he has a great day. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Parker.
Tim.
Appreciate you, man.
Bye now.
Bye. All right. That was an awesome moment with one of my favorite design leaders in the world. I want to ask you all, first of all, what did you learn from that? One of the things I love about Parker is that he's always a great pool of knowledge when it comes to what's going on in the future of work and how people can thrive in this future. So let me know what you learned in the comments below. Also wanted to mention, if you are interested in joining our Guide Early Access program, make sure that you check out guideapp.co, guideapp.co. Sign up for our early access program so you can get first access to what we're building with Guide. We're excited. We've been building hard, and we continue to build hard to ensure that we can deliver this software soon to come. So definitely check it out. And if you're interested in being on a future episode of Unleashing the Future of Work, a guide podcast, please check out UTFOWW.com, UTFOW.com. And if you have recommendations on people you think I should interview, let me know as well. Send me a direct message on LinkedIn or send me a message on unleashingthefutureofwork.com. So I want to show love to Justin, who's saying, thanks for hosting this, Tim. I learned that the future is here. It is. It truly is. It truly is here. And I'm really excited about it. As someone that is actively in this space and building the future, I think one of the things that Parker really said that draws on me is, we all have this ability to create and adapt our environments. And, we can't take that for granted by any means, right? And what we're seeing right now with COVID-19 and how a lot of different economies, not only the US, are actively bouncing back from this is that there's a lot of innovation solutions out there. I was actually just on Instagram the other day, and one of my good friends actually shared this really, really great image about how there's a few industrial designers in the US who are thinking about how do you create face masks that allow you to social distance, but still are really like beautifully aesthetically pleasing. And what you see with these types of solutions is that COVID-19 has been that kind of triggering effect that causes people to think a lot more creatively about how do we, how do we take care of healthcare workers? How do we make sure that we're all safe, but still at the same time, what are some of the new ideas that will unfold due to what we've went through? And that excites me as someone that's a designer and a technologist at heart. So I'm really, really excited about the future, and I'm so excited that people like Parker are leading this future. So if you're leading and building something similar to where we're building at Guide, let me know. What are you building? How are you looking to change the future? How are you looking to really challenge the status quo in your work? Let me know in the comments. And also, more importantly, feel free to message me if you have any questions. And definitely check out guideapp.co to be part of our early access program if you're interested in being a part of our Guide community. All right, Guide community, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Unleashing the Future of Work Live, a Guide podcast. Tomorrow, I'll be tuning in with a really special guest that I think you'll love. She's pretty amazing, and you're definitely going to want to follow her work after our episode. All right, y'all. With that said, peace, love, and talk to you soon.